Story 1. The trench that breathed the order came down in the grey light of dawn. Our platoon was to take over an abandoned trench section along the western front, a stretch to brass called strategically vital. To us, it was another patch of mud and misery. When we arrived, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Most trenches stank of rot and echoed with distant screams or artillery, but here nothing. No bodies, no rats, not even the constant drip of water, just emptiness. "Where the hell is everyone?" Corporal Jennings muttered. He spat into the mud, though it barely made a sound. "They pulled out fast," Sergeant Doyle said, but he didn't sound convinced. His eyes kept darting along the trench walls, like he expected them to move. We settled in, stacking our rifles, lighting cigarettes where the smoke wouldn't carry. But even the cigarettes tasted wrong, acrid and heavy, as if the very air didn't want us here. That night, Private Lutz was on watch when I heard him whispering. I crawled over, thinking he was losing it, but when I reached him, I heard it too. A sound from the trench wall. It wasn't water, it wasn't rats. It was a heartbeat, slow, heavy. The mud itself pulsed in rhythm, a faint thump that vibrated through the wood braces. We both backed away, but nothing else happened. The others didn't believe us until the second night. That's when the trench began to breathe. I woke to the sound of air moving. At first I thought it was artillery, the rush of shells overhead. But no, the trench walls expanded and contracted, like a chest inhaling, exhaling. The mud shifted beneath our boots, sighing as though alive. Men panicked. Some climbed out into no man's land before Doyle barked them back down. "Hold the line," he shouted, though his own voice cracked. The walls stilled after a while, but none of us slept again. On the third night, Private Gallagher disappeared. He'd been on sentry duty. We found his rifle still propped against the firing step, bayonet fixed, but no sign of him. Then someone noticed the wall. Gallagher's face pressed against the mud, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream. His body was half submerged in the earth, skin fused with the trench wall itself. We clawed at the dirt, tried to pull him free, but the more we dug, the deeper he sank. The mud swallowed him like quicksand, and soon there was nothing left. Some men wept, others cursed. Doyle just stared, jaw clenched, hands shaking too much to light his cigarette. After that, the trench changed. It began whispering, not words exactly, more like voices under the mud, murmuring in dozens of tones. Sometimes they sounded like our mothers, sometimes like men we'd lost weeks ago. Private Lutz swore he heard his brother's voice, though his brother had died back in Ypres. The whispers made men restless. They started clawing at the walls with their bare hands, digging like animals. Doyle had to strike 2 men unconscious before they buried themselves alive. By the 5th night, none of us were sane. The collapse began at dawn. It started with a groan, low and deep, rolling through the trench like thunder. Then the ground buckled, boards snapped, sandbags burst, and mud surged inward. Men screamed as the walls folded over them, dragging them down. Lutz was swallowed whole, his helmet vanishing beneath the earth. Jennings fired his rifle into the mud, as if bullets could kill dirt, before he too disappeared with a shriek. I ran, God forgive me, I ran. I scrambled over the parapet into no man's land, mud sucking at my boots. Machine guns opened in the distance, but even the Germans stopped firing when they saw the trench collapse, as though they too feared whatever lived inside. I didn't stop until I reached the next line. They pulled me into another trench, this one crowded with men who stared at me like I was a ghost. My uniform was soaked in mud, my hands shredded from clawing at the earth. "What happened?" an officer demanded. I couldn't answer. All I could do was listen, because beneath their trench, too, I heard it. That same slow heartbeat. The earth shuddered underfoot, the walls pulsed, and I knew the truth. It wasn't just our trench, it was all of them. The trenches weren't built into the earth. They were built through something alive, and it was still hungry. Story 2. Operation Night Harvest. The jungle was too quiet. We'd been humping through it for 3 days. A 6-man recon team sent to investigate to patrols that never came back. The canopy pressed down on us like a coffin lid, and not once had I heard the usual jungle chorus. No birds, no insects, not even the distant rumble of artillery. Just silence. Lieutenant Carter kept glancing at his map, though he knew it wouldn't help. "Stay sharp," he muttered, his voice barely carried. Eyes open, guns ready. We all nodded, but we were already on edge. In Vietnam, silence meant death. We found the first bodies on the second night. They were hanging from the trees. American uniforms, stripped of boots and weapons, but the men themselves, what was left, were pale, shriveled, drained. Their skin clung to bone like parchment, their mouths stretched open in silent screams. Private Diaz vomited into the dirt. Sergeant Miller swore under his breath. VCI whispered. "No," Carter said. His face was gray in the moonlight. "The Kong don't do this. We cut the bodies down and buried them quick, though none of us wanted to touch them. Their flesh felt cold, clammy, like they'd been dead for weeks, but their tags said they'd gone missing only 4 days ago. I didn't sleep that night." The jungle started watching us after that. I felt it first, the sensation of eyes on my back as we moved. When I turned, the shadows shifted, but nothing was there. Diaz swore he saw shapes moving between the trees. Once, Miller spun and fired into the brush, swearing something had stalked him. But when we checked, no footprints, no blood, nothing, just silence. On the 4th day, we found the second patrol, or what was left. Their bodies were arranged in a clearing, 20 of them, sprawled in a circle. Each man had been opened from throat to belly, his insides gone. No blood, no insects feeding, just emptiness, like they'd been scooped clean. And hanging from the branches above, we saw them. Shapes, thin, long-limbed eyes, glowing faintly yellow in the dusk. Not human, not anything I'd seen before. "Jesus Christ," Diaz whispered. The shapes melted back into the trees, silent as smoke. Carter raised the radio. "Echo command. This is Night Harvest team. We need immediate." The radio crackled. A voice came through, faint, distorted. "Help us. Trapped. They're coming." It was the voice of Sergeant O'Connor, one of the men lying gutted at our feet. Carter's face went pale. Radio silence. We move now. That night, they came for us. We heard them, first branches snapping high above, not on the ground but in the canopy. Shapes leaping from tree to tree. Then the eyes appeared, dozens of them, encircling us in the dark. We opened fire. M16s spat flame, tracers slicing the blackness. Bullets tore leaves and branches, but the shapes moved too fast. One dropped onto Private Nguyen, claws flashing. He screamed as it ripped him open, blood spraying the dirt. We barely had time to turn before it vanished, dragging him into the dark. Another lunged at Miller. He swung his rifle like a club, smashing it in the face. For a heartbeat, I saw it clearly, gray skin stretched tight over bone, mouth a mess of fangs, eyes burning yellow. It hissed like steam before darting away. "Keep firing," Carter shouted, but it was useless. For every shadow we hit, 3 more moved in silence. They weren't hunting us for territory, they were feeding. By dawn, only 3 of us remained, Carter, Diaz, and me. We stumbled through the jungle, rifles nearly empty, nerves shattered. Every tree looked like it had eyes. Diaz broke first. He dropped his pack, screaming, "They're still here." There's still something snatched him midward. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. His screams cut off in a gurgle. Blood sprayed down from the canopy like rain. Carter and I didn't stop. We ran. We burst into a clearing where a helicopter circled above. I waved my arms, shouting until my throat tore. The bird dipped lower, signaling to land. Then Carter froze. I turned to him. His face was pale, lips trembling. He held the radio. It crackled again with O'Connor's voice. "Help us. Trapped. They're coming, don't you hear it?" Carter whispered. His eyes were wide, glassy. "They're calling us." He staggered back into the I grabbed for him, but something pulled him upward into the branches. His scream ended almost instantly, and then I was alone. The helicopter landed in the clearing, rotors chopping the air. Soldiers leaped out, pulling me aboard. My hands shook so badly I couldn't hold my rifle. They asked me what happened, where my squad was. I couldn't answer, because as we lifted off, I looked down at the jungle, and I saw them, dozens of glowing eyes staring up at me from the shadows, unblinking, waiting. The jungle wasn't empty. The jungle was hungry. Story 3. The Frozen Outpost. The Winter War had chewed us into bones and frost. I was stationed with a Soviet platoon at an isolated Arctic outpost in Karelia, where the snow buried everything except hunger. Supplies came late, letters never came at all, and every night the cold crept closer to killing us. The outpost itself was little more than a half-collapsed bunker surrounded by ice walls. Wind screamed through the cracks, carrying voices that weren't there. We told ourselves it was only the blizzard. Soldiers will tell themselves anything if it means sleeping a little longer. But none of us slept much once the scratching began. At first, it was faint. A soft scrape from beneath the ice, like nails on glass. We thought it was foxes digging for scraps. But then the sound grew louder, deeper. It echoed up through the frozen ground and vibrated in our bones. Private Kalia said it sounded like claws. Sergeant Mikhailov laughed at him, though his laugh was forced. "It's the Finns," he said. "Tunneling." We didn't believe him, not really. 2 nights later, we lost our first man. Yuri had been standing guard by the ice ridge. When his relief came, all they found was his rifle lying in the snow. His tracks ended at a hole in the ice. The hole was small, too small for a man, yet he was gone. We stared into the darkness below, listening. The scratching was louder now, like something had been waiting. Mikhailov ordered the hole sealed with explosives. The charges went off with a dull thud, collapsing the tunnel. For a while, the scratching stopped, but that night, it came back, from all around us. The blizzard hit the next day, cutting us off completely. White swallowed the world. We couldn't see more than a few feet from the bunker entrance. The storm howled like a living thing, drowning out all other sound. Still, under the howl, I heard it, a heavy thumping, slow, rhythmic, like footsteps moving beneath the ice. We huddled in the bunker, rifles clutched to our chests, and tried not to listen. When the beast came, it didn't come quietly. The ground cracked open one night, the floor of the bunker splitting as though the ice itself were breaking apart. From the gap crawled something that should not have existed. It was tall, hunched, its back crowned with frost-covered antlers. Its body was stretched thin, skin gray and tight over bones. The stench of rot filled the bunker. Its eyes glowed pale blue, like ice under moonlight. Collier screamed. The thing moved faster than I thought possible. Its jaws clamped around him, tearing him in half before the rest of us could raise our rifles. We fired wildly, bullets cracking the bunker walls. The creature staggered but did not fall. Its howl shook the air, rattling icicles from the ceiling. We fled into the storm. The blizzard swallowed us whole. Snow whipped across my face, freezing tears in my eyes. Men scattered in every direction, their shouts muffled by the wind. I heard them die one by one. A scream to the left, cut short, a burst of rifle fire to the right, ending in silence. The beast hunted us through the storm, picking us off like rabbits. By dawn, only Sergeant Mikhailov and I remained. We found shelter in an ice cavern, too exhausted to run further. That was when Mikhailov told me the truth. "This place," he whispered, teeth chattering, "is cursed. The Finns call it the Hunger's Ground. They say something ancient lives beneath the ice, something that wakes when men spill blood here." I wanted to call him a liar, but the screams outside said otherwise. We set our last charges inside the cavern. "If it comes," Mikhailov said, "we bury it, no matter what." The scratching grew louder. Then came the thump of heavy steps. The creature entered, its antlers scraping the cavern roof, eyes burning like frozen fire. We opened fire until our rifles clicked empty. Mikhailov lit the fuse, shoving me toward the exit. "Run." I stumbled out into the storm as the cavern erupted behind me. Ice shattered, snow geysered into the air, and the roar of the beast was swallowed in thunder. Then silence. I woke half buried in snow, ears ringing. The cavern was gone, collapsed into a pit of shattered ice. No sign of Mikhailov, no sign of the beast. For days I wandered alone, frost gnawing at my flesh. At last, a Soviet patrol found me half dead, raving about monsters beneath the ice. They didn't believe me. They called me mad, but I still hear the scratching when the nights grow cold, and sometimes, when the ice cracks on the rivers, I swear I see pale blue eyes staring up through the water, waiting, hungry. Story 4, Black Sands of Karhuz. The desert storm came out of nowhere. We were a 4-vehicle convoy running supplies through Karhuz province. Nothing special, just another patch of sun-scorched nowhere. But when the wind rose, it swallowed the horizon in a wall of black sand. Visibility dropped to 0. The radios crackled, failed, and the GPS units blinked dead. "Shut her down," Sergeant Whitaker yelled over the roar. "We're blind out here." Engines cut, and we sat in the suffocating dark, sand hissing against metal like a million knives. When it finally passed, we weren't where we'd started. The storm had pushed dunes across the road. burying it entirely. What it uncovered instead was odor. We found the ruins at dusk. Half-buried pillars jutted from the sand, carved with symbols none of us recognized. They weren't Arabic. They weren't anything I'd seen before. The air around them shimmered with heat, though the sun was gone. Jesus, Private Ortiz muttered. How old do you think this is? Older than the desert, Whitaker said. His voice was flat. He didn't like it. None of us did. Still, orders were orders. Wait out the storm, then find our bearings, and the ruins offered shelter. We set up camp inside a half-collapsed chamber. The walls were covered in murals, lines of soldiers marching into dunes, faces twisted in terror, while something vast and black rose behind them. Corporal Jenkins laughed nervously. Ancient horror story, he said. But his laugh didn't last long. That night, the sand began to move. I awoke to Ortiz shaking me. You hear that? It was a whisper, faint, like wind moving through tunnels, but the ruins had no tunnels. The sand outside shifted, pouring slowly into the chamber. Though the air was still, it slithered like water, forming small dunes that rose and fell. Back outside, Whitaker ordered. His tone brooked no argument. But when we stepped into the open, the desert wasn't the same. The stars were gone, blotted out by black haze. The sand around the ruins moved in waves, rolling like the ocean, and in the distance, something vast stirred beneath it. We heard the first scream from Jenkins. He'd lagged behind, fumbling with his pack. We turned in time to see him dragged under, sand sucking him down to the waist. His face was pale with terror as he clawed for purchase, screaming our names. We grabbed him, pulled until our arms ached, but the sand didn't let go. It pulled harder. His screams cut off when the desert swallowed him whole. The ground stilled. Only his rifle remained, half buried in the black dunes. Panic set in. Ortiz wanted to run blind into the desert, but Whitaker forced him back at gunpoint. We move as a unit, he snapped. His hands shook as he reloaded his rifle, though he had nothing to shoot at. The murals weighed on me. The soldiers drawn there had worn expressions just like ours. Fear, helplessness, and always, behind them, the same figure. A shape of shifting sand and shadow, taller than mountains. We tried to huddle inside a vehicle, but it didn't matter. The sand crept in through cracks, filling the floor like water. Ortiz screamed as it wrapped around his legs, climbing higher, trying to pull him under. We cut him free with knives, hacking until his boots split, but the sand retreated only when Whitaker fired wildly into it. The bullets passed through harmlessly, but the shape recoiled, sliding back into the dunes. That was when I realized it wasn't sand at all. Not really, it was alive. We abandoned the vehicles, weapons useless. Our only hope was the ruins. Maybe the builders had left some kind of sanctuary, some place the thing couldn't touch. We staggered back into the chamber, hearts pounding, nerves frayed raw. The whispers rose again, louder now, forming words we couldn't understand. My vision swam as I looked at the murals. They had changed. The soldiers weren't faceless anymore. They were us. Whitaker dropped to his knees, muttering a prayer. Ortiz laughed, a dry, broken sound. We're already dead, just like the others. It's showing us the sand erupted. It poured in through the doorway, faster than water, swallowing the chamber. The black haze followed, pressing in like a suffocating fog. In its heart, a figure rose, a colossus of shifting sand, eyes glowing like dying embers. Its form twisted, reshaped, never the same for more than a heartbeat. We opened fire out of instinct. Useless. The bullets disappeared into its body like pebbles into a river. Ortiz screamed as it reached for him. He didn't stop screaming, not even when it pulled him apart like dust. Whitaker shoved me against the back wall. Run when it gives you the chance. I shook my head. There's nowhere to run. He gave me a sad smile. Then remember. He raised a grenade and pulled the pin. The blast lit the chamber white. Sand and fire collided, the colossus shrieking with a sound that rattled my teeth. I was thrown into darkness. When I woke, the ruins were half buried again. The storm was gone. The desert lay silent. Still, Whitaker, Ortiz, Jenkins, they were all gone. Only I remained. I staggered into daylight, lungs burning, ears ringing. A rescue convoy found me hours later. They thought I was delirious, raving about shadows in the sand. But I know what I saw. And now, at night, When I try to sleep, I cough up grains of black sand. It pours from my mouth, from my skin, like the desert marked me, like it's still inside me, waiting. Story 5. The last broadcast, the city was dead. Our squad moved through the ruins with rifles raised, boots crunching glass in empty streets. Buildings leaned like broken teeth. Fires smoldered weeks after the bombardment, choking the air with ash. I'd seen war zones before, but nothing like this. No survivors, no dogs scavenging, not even rats, just silence. Then the radio crackled. ... Mayday ... This is Bravo unit ... pinned down, need immediate extraction ... double quotes. We froze. The voice was faint, distorted, but clear enough. An emergency call, coordinates followed. Lieutenant Green glanced at us. That's just a mile out. Move. None of us argued. Orders were simple. No one left behind, but part of me already knew something was wrong. We found the signal source in the subway tunnels. The entrance was choked with rubble, but the radio grew louder as we climbed down. ... Trapped. Running out of ammo. They're coming, Private Ellis muttered. That's O'Malley's voice. I frowned. O'Malley was KIA 2 weeks ago. I'd seen his body zipped in a bag. Green shut Ellis up with a glare. We check it out, so we did. The tunnels stank of mold and blood. Our flashlights caught graffiti on the walls, messages scrawled in ash. Don't follow the voices, don't listen. The signal grew stronger. Static mixed with the sound of gunfire, shouting, men begging for help. But the echoes in the tunnels didn't match. They lagged, a fraction behind, like an old recording. We found them in a collapsed station. 20 men, or what was left. Skeletal remains still in uniform, helmets tilted back, rifles rusted in their bony grips. They'd been dead for years, yet the radio sat in the middle of them, glowing faint green. It was still transmitting. We circled it in silence. How the hell ... double quotes, Ellis whispered. Green ignored him, crouching to check the device. It was smashed, wires dangling loose, no battery, and yet the voices kept coming. Cover me, incoming. We need backup. I felt sick. It was O'Malley's voice. I knelt and touched one of the skeletons. The dog tag read his name. The air went cold. Then the voices changed. At first it was still O'Malley, but the tone shifted, pleading, desperate, don't leave us here. Don't leave us in the dark. The signal distorted, warping into a dozen voices layered together. They called out our names, each of us, perfectly clear. Ellis, Green, Daniels, my name. I dropped the radio. It landed on the concrete with a crack, but the voices didn't stop. We bolted for the surface. Boots pounded concrete, breath ragged, but the tunnels weren't empty anymore. Shadows shifted at the edge of our lights. Shapes followed us, half seen, twisted forms in uniform. Faces we recognized, faces we'd buried. O'Malley was among them, jaw hanging loose, eyes glowing faint, static green. Ellis screamed, firing into the dark. Bullets sparked off walls, ricocheting. The shadows didn't flinch. The radio shrieked. Our names over and over, faster, louder, until it drowned out our thoughts. We made it to the stairwell. Green shoved Ellis up first, then me. But before Green could follow, something dragged him back. His scream cut short. Ellis reached down, trying to grab him, but I pulled him away. He's gone. We stumbled into daylight, the ruins stretching silent before us. Behind us, the subway mouth gaped black, and from it, faint and broken, came Green's voice. Help us ... trapped ... need immediate extraction ... We staggered back to base, 2 men where 6 had left. The CO didn't believe us. He chalked it up to stress, hallucination. You're hearing ghosts, he said. But the radio on my pack wouldn't stay silent. Even now, weeks later, it still whispers when the lights go out. Static first, then voices, not strangers anymore. Not O'Malley, not Green. Mine. Every night I hear my own voice on the other end of the transmission. Help me, I'm trapped. They're coming, and I don't know how long before I answer.